Okay. Alyssa, would you like to do the land acknowledgement?
Yeah, so we begin by acknowledging that we all meet on the traditional lands of America's first people. Here in Kansas, we are on the land that is historically home to many Native nations, including the Kaw, the Osage, the Pawnee, and it's currently home to the Prairie Band of Potawatomi, the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas, the Iowa Tribe of Kansas, and the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska. We honor America's first people and all elders past, present, and emerging, and we are called on to learn and share what we discover about the tribal history, the culture, and the contributions that have been suppressed in the telling of the story of America. I'm going to drop into the chat the native-land.ca if you're interested to know what tribes occupy the area that you live in here in Kansas. And I also want to bring forward the conversation around land acknowledgements and how we really need to be focusing on honoring and celebrating stories that are emerging still and pushing ourselves to acknowledge not just the land, but the people who occupy that space.
Great, thank you. If you hopped on late, well, not late, sorry. We've just been on here early for a pre-conference. I'm Katie Morris. I'm the KEA webmaster and was organizing all this today. I apologize if you tried to look at the supply list earlier. I didn't realize that it had defaulted to where only KEA.com accounts could see it, but that is fixed now. I am going to hop over and share my screen to show you how Google Classroom is set up. Pretty simple. Whoops, get the right button here. So right now, there's not a ton on there. Under classwork, we do have the documents that show the schedule for the day and the list of supplies, because we do have some hands-on workshops. So if you'd like to follow along, you can get those gathered up. Got them pulled up here. So for each session, there's the description and then a supply list. So you're welcome to grab that and follow along. We're going to do just a couple announcements, let you guys know about some things that are coming up, and then we are going to kick off and I'll be doing the first presentation. Let's see, what did I put first on here? Shannon, would you like to share about the new grant we're going to be offering?
There, okay. Didn't want to unmute there. Yes. KAEA is going to be offering for the first time what we're calling project grants. Anyone who is interested, you have to be a member, but anyone who is interested in filling out a proposal, those will be coming out pretty soon. The window for the proposals will be March 15th through May 15th. If there is something that you're wanting to do in your classroom, but you don't have the budget, you don't have the funding for it, for equipment or those sort of things, if you're wanting to get, let's say, some kiln shelves, or you're wanting a set of jelly prints or something like that, you can fill out a proposal and submit that, and you may get your project funded by KAEA. The proposals themselves will be going out via, I think, email, social media pretty soon. The form will have all of the questions that you need to answer, all of the information that we will need to review those. And then the committee will be looking at those proposals, the ones that we get in, and kind of vetting them and so forth. And then the entire board will be viewing those at board retreat, and we'll make decisions then on how many we can afford to fund. We've left it open-ended as far as how much you can apply for, so that we have some flexibility in, if it's a year that we have extra funds available, we may be able to fund more. But that's something that we wanted to offer to KAEA members. We know that a lot of people are really struggling with budgets getting cut and so forth, and they just don't have the money to be able to do the projects that they're really wanting to do with their students. We wanted to allow for a way that we can maybe help out with that a little bit. Is there any questions about that?
All right, well, if you think of any questions later, Shannon did a lot of work to help us get our committee organized and all of the plans for this. So thank you, Shannon. I think that's going to be a really positive benefit for a lot of our members. I'm gonna share my screen again. Flip back over here. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to share with you, if you're not aware, KEA has started a book club, and our next book is Steal Like an Artist. We're going to be having that book club on Sunday, March 5th at 7 p.m. I have this book, and it's really an easy read. It's pretty inspirational, though. It's very interesting. Just lots of ways to get inspiration, and it talks about like being inspired by things, not just copying. So Steal Like an Artist, great book. After that, the next book that is scheduled is Big Lies in a Small Town, which is a novel, so a little bit of a longer read. But we would love to have some more people join our book club discussions, pretty laid back. Yeah, check that out. We also have a list of all of the past books that we have done, the KEA book club recommendations, that's there. And if you have a book that you have read that you think would be great, or just that you're looking forward to read, you can email Lynn Feltz, or you can send me a message, and I'm helping Lynn kind of keep those ideas organized so we don't forget any good ideas. We're always looking for suggestions for that. And then the next thing I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of is Youth Art Month that is quickly approaching. So there's a graphic here that has kind of the big dates to remember. If you would like to send your artwork with an area volunteer, you need to get that to them by February 23rd, unless you have communicated with them to work out something different. February 25th, that's a Saturday, and we will be setting up the artwork that day. Your artwork must be received by 6 p.m. So if you're mailing it or you're dropping it off yourself, you need to make sure that it gets there by that deadline to be included in the show. And then while every art teacher in the state is allowed to submit one student's work per school in which they teach, so like I teach K-12, I'm allowed to put in an elementary, a middle school, and a high school entry. When I used to teach at 2 schools, I could have one from each. The KEA member benefit is that you can submit your students' work to the Blick Youth Art Month competition. So there's some awesome prizes for that. You need to submit that digitally, and it has to be the same piece that is physically on display. We're going to be at the Topeka Shawnee County Public Library again this year. It's been a really nice space to have it. And then the reception and awards will be March 25th. So the artwork will be up from the end of February all through March. And then of course, we'll have a little Kansas display at the National Convention in San Antonio. So that's kind of the big dates, but the document that's on our website and also included here has all of the information that you need to know in one place. It has the rules, the how the artwork needs to be prepared, the links to the forms and parent letters and things about advocacy. So we hope that we have a lot of people participate in Youth Art Month this year. And then afterwards, if you can send what you did for the Youth Art Month scrapbook, we always like to submit that to show all of the cool things that Kansas has done for Youth Art Month. Are there any questions about Youth Art Month? We do have, when is the show pickup? That is at the end on March 25th at the end of the show. It has to be picked up right after the ceremony, or you can say on your form who is going to pick it up for you. So the people at the library and the KEA board members are going to help take that work down so it can get passed back to the person it belongs to. So please, if you are there, don't remove artwork until that designated time. We don't want to cause confusion and think that someone's work is missing because it was just taken down early. I think I already asked if there are any questions. Okay, if there are not, then I will pull up what I'm going to be presenting, and we'll just go ahead and kick off. Let me get back to the beginning. And if anyone has any questions that I don't notice, feel free to just unmute and interrupt me. Alyssa had to go take her dog to daycare, so when she gets back, she'll be helping monitor the chat. But until then, if I don't see it, just interrupt me. All right. So I am pretty excited about murals. Here's the very first mural that I did at a school. I think I may have done one mural before this that was in my mom's boss's daughter's bedroom. It was like a whole jungle scene, but I don't have a photo of that. So I just thought for fun, I would show the first mural I made. One of the teachers at my high school wanted her room to be really calm, and she liked sailboats and lighthouses. So she had me paint this scene over the summer, and then the following year come back and add the tree. She wanted it to say establishing roots and encouraging wings. So I kind of transitioned to that, and I've definitely learned a lot since then, but for fun, there's the first mural I ever did. I've painted several more murals since then, in community settings. I've painted them on my own and also working with students. So I have some goals for the day. I want to kind of share how a class I have this semester is set up. For the first time, I have an Art for Schools class. I called it that in case we ended up needing to do something else besides specifically murals. So I'm going to explain how I started that class with my students. We're going to look at a bunch of examples of murals. I know there's been a big movement in the last couple of years with different communities having mural projects, which I think has been really cool to see. And then I'll have some practical things about like how to plan and prepare for a mural, how to get approval, supplies that I like, and then just, logistics. So as I mentioned, I have a brand new class this semester. We have three murals in the works right now. One of them is about 75% finished. Had a lot of touch-ups because, as you can imagine, painting on cinder block has its challenges. And this is some very bumpy cinder block in this hallway where you can see my students working right now. So we started by going over the history of murals, like what are murals? What is their purpose? And just seeing how they've changed throughout time. Then the class started brainstorming, coming up with a design. The first location, my principal asked that we focus on that first. From the gym to the commons where we have our concession stand, there was just a big blank wall with kind of some chipping paint, not very attractive, that people walk by all the time. So he asked that we do something to make that more interesting to look at, really trying to make the school more welcoming and exciting place for the students to be. So that was our first focus, and I have more about that later. So I just have the slides that I went through with the students. We're going to go through this pretty quick. So yeah, what is a mural? Usually on a wall. The etymology, I always think that's interesting. We talked about how murals and architecture kind of work together. And then of course I had to put some trompe-l'oeil architecture in there. I liked this quote. In this sense, mural is the only form of painting that is truly three-dimensional since it modifies and partakes of a given space. So we do talk about how a mural is different than just painting on a small canvas, different approaches to that. So we started way, way back in the very beginning with cave art. Some examples of that. We talked about fresco, and especially how it was used throughout art history. We've got some Minoan art here, Byzantine with mosaics, Italian Renaissance. I have never been to, I've never been out of the country, but I would love to someday get to go see the Sistine Chapel and all of the other artwork in that area. We watched a video about that, which I have to tell you, the day that we covered this, my principal's, he calls her his daughter. They had an exchange student from Italy last year. She was here to visit. So I told her, I said, I'm feeling so self-conscious trying to pronounce words in Italian with an actual Italian person in my classroom right now. So that was super awkward for me, but she was really sweet. We've got the creation of Adam, the Last Supper, and I told them the story about how it immediately started deteriorating. And I like to show this view of it because most students have seen the close-up of the Last Supper, but most of them don't know about the door that was cut through the middle of it. So that was really cool to see that space. And then we kind of have a big jump because murals don't change a whole lot between, you know, the Renaissance until we get to the Mexican muralists. So we talked about how it's kind of a, I just lost the word I was going to say, art for everyone. It's accessible instead of art being, you know, restrained to a gallery or only for wealthy people. Murals are like a democratic form of art where everybody can see it. So we talked about that. Yes, before murals were aristocratic. That was a good word. Then we talked about the New Deal and Works Progress Administration art, and I really went down a rabbit hole with this. I found out there was a WPA mural in my hometown at an older school building. I'd never heard of it before. It doesn't exist anymore. I'm on a mission still to try to figure out what this mural was. I have not had any luck so far. Even the Historical Society doesn't know what it was, but I'm gonna keep investigating. But it was cool to see just in Kansas how many different murals were created in that. This one is in Horton, which is about 20 minutes from my school. There's several more in the area. And then the next book club after Steal Like an Artist, Big Lies in a Small Town, goes between 2 time periods. And one of those artists was working on a mural for the New Deal art project. So that was at the same time I was working on this. That was really interesting to me. Whoops, I did not mean to click on that. Sorry. All right, this is another example. This one's by Berger Sanson at the Lindsborg, Kansas post office. Lots of post office murals. We briefly looked at Guernica. So we were going through a bunch of murals really quickly. We spent about a class and a half just looking at the history. And then we kind of talked about street art, how there's a lot of overlap and it can be hard to, you know, sort it out, like street art versus graffiti versus murals. I didn't try to have hard and fast categories there. But yeah, of course, we have to look at Banksy. We looked at a lot of different styles, some Shepherd Fairy. I really love this design. And, you know, had a quote from him about what this mural means. Earlier this morning when we were doing our Jedi coffee and conversations, this is how I kind of handle bringing up some of those things in my school. I'm in a pretty small conservative school. So I just like to, you know, have some quotes from artists and just work in examples when I can. But I liked the message of this one. Okay, this one was pretty cool. And of course, you know, the sky isn't always going to blend in with the top of the mural, but this time of day was perfect for that photo. And then we've got some different types. I think I maybe found some of these artists from the diverse artists list. I'm not positive. But yeah, I was really trying to show a lot of different styles of murals. I think, I don't know if it's all small communities, but in mine, people tend to think of just one specific style of painting, like this is art, and then approach murals like, just like you would, you know, a 16 by 20 inch canvas. And I wanted to show that a larger canvas, you know, you can have a bigger impact. So I was really working to find different examples there. All right. I have a lot of examples, like I said, trying to go through those pretty quick. I did show some of the Capitol murals. We've got John Stuart Curry there, of course. Another one of his works. This is my favorite mural that's at the state capitol. If you haven't seen this one yet, it is a fairly new mural that was there in 2018. I think it's really beautifully painted. and visually tells that story. So I know while a lot of my students have been on field trips when they were in elementary school to the Capitol, because we're only about 30 minutes away, most of them haven't seen this mural yet. So I wanted to make sure they saw that. So the very first mural I did at this school, we started in 2020, and in the 2019, that fall, I took my advanced class to Topeka and we toured murals in that area to kind of get inspiration and help them see different ideas. So we have a lot of photos of that. This one is the Aaron Douglas mural that's at the Aaron Douglas Park in Topeka. The Brown versus Board mural that's right across the street from the National Historic Site. There's a video about this and about how all the different people worked on it together. We didn't have time to watch that, but I do have it included. It's 130 feet long, 30 feet tall. So this is a very, very large mural. Here's the video. If you'd like to go back and watch that later, you can. Oh, there we go. Some close-ups of part that I really liked. I can't even really read this, but I liked the quote at the bottom: "Make your life poorly suited for anything." I gotta move. "Anything but love, and when hate knocks, act like you moved." But I liked how there were a lot of different ideas that came together in one composition. So there are a lot of murals all around Topeka. Some of them I had never seen before, even though I go to Topeka fairly often. So we had to seek them out, drive around. This one's a pretty cool style too. On the corner, I think their playground is right up here behind the fence, but just beautifying, you know, some plain ugly concrete, and now it's artwork. Some close-ups of that. We also went to North Topeka and just walked around the Noto Arts District. This little character we found several times throughout the neighborhood. So that was cool. He just kind of like hiding in places. Lots of different styles. We especially liked this one that had the mosaic mixed in. And then I love sunflowers and the colors here. So we looked at those and used that to make our plan, and I'll show you more about that later. I did want students to be aware of all of the murals that have popped up in different communities around Kansas. This one in Salina is amazing. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was there until we had a board meeting and just happened to drive by it. And I had to stop and like go back and circle around so I could look at this closer. So it is obviously huge and it really gets your attention, but it is so cool. And this artist is known for making murals on silos, grain elevators. So we've got little kids playing like Ring Around the Rosie. And here's some more views of it. So next time you go to Salina or make a trip, go check it out. It's super cool. And then I just, went down the rabbit hole again and started finding even more murals for Salina. I'm like, oh, well, there's this. What else is there? So a lot of these I haven't seen in person. I just found images online. I guess they had a whole mural festival. The Boom Festival is what it was called. So we've got like really modern styles, really realistic. I'm a huge butterfly nerd, so this one was super cool. And I talked to the students about how most people, if you tell them like you made a mural of butterflies, they're going to picture like a butterfly on a flower. So this was a different take on it. Feels like a little collection, only very large. This one in Manhattan, I saw when we stopped to eat pizza. I was like, oh, there's a mural. I didn't know that was there. So I know I could have spent, days finding pictures of all of the different murals that have popped up around Kansas. But I wanted students to just be aware, this is happening. People are excited about it, and maybe they'll see some when they're traveling. This one's in Emporia, and I'm super excited that we're going to be at Emporia State for our fall conference this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one in person. This is on the Trox Gallery. I guess it used to be a music store back in the day, so it had a kind of faded jazz themed mural on it before. So they brightened it up so it kind of makes more sense for that space now. I believe there was a summer class at ESU where the students worked on that mural. And then there's a whole bunch of little hallway murals in the art department hallway, which I was pumped about because I remember being a student there and saying, oh, it would be really cool to paint murals on this thing, but it never, occurred to me to actually do it. I just kind of filed it away for someday when I'm, an art teacher, we can maybe do something like that. So different styles going on. This one was still being worked on when we were there. You can see there's the painter's tape around the edges still. And this one probably was designed by their, I'm guessing like the marketing or the graphic design program, but I thought it was really cool too. So we visited in November to tour the art department, and I knew that we were going to have this murals class in the spring. So I was like, okay, let me take a picture of this because we need to do a school themed mural for that hallway. So once again, we were just kind of gathering inspiration. Mindy's Murals, she's located out of Junction City and has really taken off in the last couple of years. You can follow her on social media and see all the cool things she's doing. So she's done a lot of local murals, but now has the goal of doing a mural in every state. So she's already got several states booked out in the next year. But yeah, lots of different styles. She has an airbrush for some of the details on it, which I think would be handy if you were going to do a very large mural. Inside the school, we're just using brushes. Another design. About half of my high school classes are technically graphic design or computer graphics, so I wanted to show some of those options as well. This one I saw when I traveled with my mom to Hamilton, Missouri to see their quilt shop. If you've never heard of this community, they were really kind of like almost dying off. And then the Missouri Star Quilt Company got really big and it's kind of revitalized this town. So now there's a ton of quilt shops there. So I liked that this was kind of playing on like the postcard style murals, but also definitely quilt inspired. So we've got other things about the history, like JCPenney's boyhood home, but then, that quilt block style. All right. And then Jackson County, where I am from, this was one of the first big murals I did. It does not exist anymore because, as you can see, the surface that we had to paint on was painted plywood, and it got so water damaged that it doesn't exist anymore. They have expressed the desire to have us redo it sometime. I think we said if we do, it's going to be on concrete, so it will last longer. But it's the wall that people could practice, their serve, practice tennis with if they were on their own. So I thought, well, it makes sense to make it like tennis players. So I had this design I laid out. My dad came up and helped me with his chalk line to do the firm lines. And then with the other people involved with Jackson County Arts, they were able to help paint it. This was done in July. That was real hot. If we do it again on concrete and hopefully earlier in the summer, so it's not so hot out, but that was a really fun mural and it was exciting to drive by and see that when it was there. This is probably my favorite mural that we have added in Jackson County. Our tourism council got a grant from the Kansas Department of Commerce, Office of Rural Prosperity. I just saw an article about how many were added through Kansas, and I cannot remember the total, but in the last year, there's been quite a few. So this artist is Lindsay Kernodle. She's based out of Wichita. Super, super nice. I got the chance to meet her when she was working on the first mural. Here she is with the governor when it was finished. She's done a lot of murals around, but she actually did 2 in Jackson County representing the eastern and the western grasslands. So, or tall grass prairie, there we go. And she made it to be an educational tool as well. So they've created like coloring sheets that the kids can do, and it shows information about all of the species that are hidden in there. She came back in October to paint the second mural. And at the time I was teaching art appreciation, so we got to go into town and tour the murals and talk to her. So that was really cool for the students to get to meet the artist and kind of ask her about her approach. She said that her favorite paint to use is the little samples you can get at like Home Depot or something like that, because you can get a lot of different colors and it's very affordable and high quality paint. So if you ever decide to do a mural and you're, close to one of those stores, that would be a good option for you. She said that the brick, thankfully, was very smooth. It's pretty old, so it was a nice surface to paint on. All right, a small mural I did over the summer was at the Banner Creek Science Center. They just have a storage shed, but they're trying to make it more interesting for people to look at. So let me see if I can do this without it being loud. I like to do time lapse when I can. So I did a time lapse video of that. There, we don't need to listen to the Office theme right now. But I did milkweed with the stages of the monarch butterfly. The education director at the Science Center was my 5th grade teacher, and we didn't have art class all the way through school. I didn't even know you could be an art teacher until I got to high school and had art class for the first time. But my 5th grade teachers, I always say they were great because they gave us a lot of opportunities and did like real art with us in class, or gave us those, you know, the chance. It wasn't just crafty coloring sheet type things. So in my 5th grade year, we started a butterfly garden and researched, and that was, I liked butterflies before, but that was what really like set me off on that path. So I wanted to do that as my science theme. Didn't have a great way to set up my camera there, but yeah, so that was fun over the summer. And I like to show students the time lapse too, so they can kind of see the process of how that worked. Whoops, we don't need to watch that again. There we go. And then this is the largest mural I have been in charge of now. As part of that grant, the county had some funding for it. So they asked me, since obviously as a teacher, I have experience working with kids, if I would be interested in kind of facilitating a mural that community members could help with. So this is what we came up with for the plan. I knew that if a lot of people were going to be helping, I wanted to do kind of flat colors and not try to do blending. The shape of this, it used to be the baby pool a long time ago. Like when my dad was little, he was talking about that. Now, of course, the baby pool's inside where there's, you know, lifeguards and things. But the pool in my hometown was built as part of the WPA. So he said, well, we can't paint on the rock. I'm like, I don't want to paint on the rock. That's cool. But this is just concrete where they filled it in. So I had the plan. I took a picture of it. I sketched it out on my iPad and then showed them the preview. I made a grid using the diagonal lines. And there's also seams, lines in the concrete. So I sketched it out with sidewalk chalk while my kids were at swimming lessons, and kind of started painting the outlines. And then we had a Saturday morning where it was publicized that the community could come and help. And I was blown away with how many people showed up. I expected, oh, there might be like a dozen people, but we had probably at least 50 people throughout the morning. At one point, there were about 30. I'm like calling my mom, can you go buy me some paintbrushes? We don't have enough. It was a really good experience. We got a lot done till we ran out of paint. And then I just went back and finished. There was quite a bit to finish up, but it was still really cool that people got to help with that. A lot of my students, when they see, I've got a picture of like the newspaper clipping up with other murals from the area. I saw you doing that, or I saw that when I went to the pool. So they've been pretty pumped about it. And my brother was nice enough to take drone pictures for me. So there's when I was working on it. And here you can see like the scale of it compared to, you know, a vehicle in a swimming pool. So that was a really cool experience. I will say I'm not the best at estimating how much paint I need. I was really, really bad at estimating it for this because I did not think about how absorbent the concrete was going to be. I'm not even going to tell you how many I thought we were going to need because it's embarrassing how far off I was. We probably used like 15 gallons of paint for this. It was a lot, but it was really fun. I'm thinking probably could have like primed it with something and saved a little bit of paint, but I did not, you know, I learned by doing. So now I know if I ever paint on concrete again, that we need to do something a little different. And then the city came back after it was finished to put a sealer on it that should hopefully protect it from graffiti. So far, nobody has messed with it. There have been several instances of people spray painting on the rock around the pool. So hopefully the mural will stay intact there. All right, I also had the opportunity to paint a mural just on my own at our local hospital over the summer. Actually, I did it in 1 week before school started. I said, I think I can get it done. I've got my youngest can start daycare that day. I go back to school next week. So I got that done. They have added a lot of Kansas artists since they've expanded the hospital. So there's like quilt artwork, there's glass, there's a really cool photo mural. But they wanted something in their dining room where the hospital employees eat their lunch. They used to have a window where they could see out to the garden, but in the remodel, they lost that. And they wanted, they said they wanted something nature, they wanted peaceful, maybe some water. So I talked to the food service director about what her idea was and kind of brainstormed from there. I took a photo of, well, a couple photos on my way home from the science center one day of a fence with the barn in the background, and there were a few wildflowers blooming at the time. So I used that as the starting point. I kind of shifted it around, shifted the perspective so you could see more of the pond, and also show more wildflowers. So I put more flowers than were blooming at that time, but just native flowers, keeping it really Kansas themed. People liked the barn the best. Of course, I like the wildflowers the best, but I tried to record that whole process just because it's fun to see that come alive. And this was the first time I used the mural paint that I have at the end. I was really impressed with that brand of paint. It was nice to work with. Thicker than house paint, but a little bit thinner than like acrylic paint out of a tube and more affordable. So that worked really well. I'm gonna skip ahead here because this is kind of long. Maybe. You know what? I think I have a picture on the next slide. There it is, all finished. So that was a fun project to do. And I was proud of myself because I have like a mental block on clouds. Every time I try to paint clouds, like they don't look right. They don't look like clouds, but I just kind of like went with it. And I was pretty happy with my clouds on that one. And then this is the next mural I'll be painting this spring. We have a small lake where some people do camping, but what it's really known for is we have a bluegrass festival. They call it Prairie Pickers in June. So we wanted to do a bluegrass themed mural. At first, I tried just doing bluegrass instruments. I was trying to stick with a pretty limited color palette. So I feel kind of bad about how many gallons of paint they had to buy for the sunflower one. So I was trying to keep it simple for this. And then I did end up for the final plan, this is what it's going to be that has the musicians. I didn't want it to be detailed faces and have it be represent specific people. I wanted it to be a little bit more universal there. So you can see I still have the same background with those colors, but ended up adding some lines for movement. I like looked up some videos and was listening to bluegrass music and trying to draw the lines that I felt. So this is the plan. I will say this is the only one that represents a specific person. This is, she taught 3rd grade at the first school where I was teaching and is in a bluegrass band. So this looks pretty much like she really looks, except, you know, she has eyeballs and things. So this is my next community mural that is going to happen. I'm pretty excited about that when the weather warms up. All right, let me grab a drink really quick because I've been talking a lot. And I have lost track of time. Alyssa, how much time do I have left?
You're doing good. You got 10 or 15 minutes.
Sweet. Okay, right on schedule. So after looking through all of that with the students, we talked about how you plan for a mural. So first of all, you got to think about this space, like how big of an area is it? What's it used for? Who's the audience? Like who's going to be in this space? Who's going to be walking by and seeing it? Because I think those are important to consider. And then the theme, you know, is there a specific theme that's requested? The first one we started in the hallway, they wanted it to be based on, you know, like our school. Or if there's not a specific thing requested, like what's logical, what makes sense in that space, what would be appropriate for it. So then the design process, we want to brainstorm and then narrow it down to a concept, choose the best idea and make a scale drawing. So we talked about, you know, you could turn feet into inches or just something to get the right proportion. I'm a big fan of using the Procreate app for that because it's just, I think it's easier to draw on, especially if you have an Apple Pencil. But some things, you know, Photoshop or Illustrator would work great too. You could even just do it on paper, but Doing it digitally makes my life a little bit easier because I can quickly adjust things, or like, what happens if I do this? And then if I don't like it, I can just undo it. So that works really well. After that, I like to make a mock-up. So I'll take a photo of the space, scale the picture, skew it, get the perspective so it feels like it's really there. That is very helpful if you are proposing it to somebody who is not a visual thinker. Not everybody can really like picture what you're describing. So that takes the guesswork out of it, and they can see exactly what you want to do. And then of course you have to get your design approved before you actually start. For our class, whoops, let me go back a minute. For our class, I'm telling them that like if they work on it individually, then the class discusses, collaborates. I have to approve it. If it's right by a classroom, then the teacher who's nearby, they approve it. And then finally, the principal has final stamp of approval. All right. My very first year of teaching, I think that's kind of crazy that I did that my very first year. I got a grant from the Auburn Washburn Foundation. I used to teach in that district, and they have the foundation will fund grants for projects that teachers propose. So I got a grant to get supplies to do a mural in the school. We had been talking a lot about helping students feel connected to their school and how that is one of like the biggest indicators of success, reading ability and feeling connected to your school. Those are super important. So I decided that we were going to talk about the history of murals, not as in-depth as I did for this high school class. I showed them some examples of murals I had done. We talked about, what kind of theme would be good. We want to do positives, like things about school. I had talked to my principal ahead of time and kind of asked, like, was there anything you would like to see? But then the students started brainstorming and coming up with designs. Some worked independently, some worked with a partner. And I knew from the beginning, and I told students that we were probably going to pull parts from different designs to make like the final. So that way it wasn't just designed by one person. So I came up with 3 possibilities, discussed that with the principal to choose the final design. And then this is what we came up with. So you saw on the previous screen, the little panther, which was the school mascot with a backpack. There was the idea of having clouds shaped like things that represented different parts of school. Several students drew sunflowers, so we put different sunflower designs. We wanted to have like night sky, rainbow, sun. So we came up with all of that, got the supplies. I sketched it out on the wall. I tried to use a grid. I don't know why I struggled so much with that, but anyway, in the end, got the plan up there, taped off the big areas, and then every student in the school helped for at least a little bit of it. The average class size at that time was about 22 students, and I did not think that was going to work well to have all 22 students trying to paint at the same time. So we had a really awesome para who stayed with the class while I took about a third of them out at a time to help. And yeah, we just cycled through. So everybody got a chance to work on part of it. And then I did the finishing touches. The following school year, I had to touch up around the edges because we had to wait to get the paint to match the wall color. But that was really a fun experience to do. Later, we did bottle cap murals that a couple of those were installed too. But that was the first approach I used working with students. There's the finished view of it. As far as I know, it's still there, but I haven't been there in 8 years. All right, and then I used the same approach for this smaller mural, only it was painted on MDF because my room is in the middle and high school building, and the elementary school where I am now is just down the sidewalk. So it's close enough that the students walk over to my room for art class, but I didn't want to haul a bunch of stuff back and forth. So the students designed the mural. We combined several different ones. We painted it and then they installed it. I think there's like a support thing at the bottom to install it on the brick. And looking at it now, I really wish that we had thought to put the ruler vertically, and we could have made it like a growth chart, because I take a picture of my kids. Here they are in front of it every year on the first day of school. I couldn't find an example of it plain, but yeah, so there's my kids. But that was fun. most of the paint still looks good. Some of it where we didn't have wall paint and we just mixed acrylic, like the erasers I noticed are really getting faded. So now we have some better paint. We're going to go back and touch that up. But the students that designed that when they were in 6th grade are now juniors in high school, and they were just talking about it the other day. They were really excited to work on that. And this all came about because they were talking about wanting to make the entryway more welcoming. So get to show them how art can solve problems. All right, I mentioned the mural from 2020 earlier. So we toured Topeka, pulled ideas from what they liked, like, oh, we really like the color scheme for this. They liked the idea of the mosaic. We talked with stakeholders, like we talked with the principal. My school is kind of unique. It was made up of 4 small towns that merged in the late 1960s to form Jackson Heights. So the students wanted to represent a little bit about the history of this school. So we've got the 4 mascots from the old school. And then usually if people have heard of Jackson Heights, it's because they've either driven by it on the way to Nebraska on Highway 75 and seen the billboard, or they saw the old news thing about how our school was originally an Atlas missile silo. That somebody bought for $1 from the government and they turned it into a school. So the students wanted to represent that as well. So we have a picture of that they wanted to be mosaic. My principal at the time was like, I think he was a little bit nervous about us putting it directly on the wall and trying to decide where he wanted it to be. So the solution was that we were going to paint on 3 4x8 foot plywood panels, smooth plywood, not the like particle board stuff. And then install that. So the good part about that was I could supervise it easily. When I had bigger classes, we could just pull the panels down on top of one table and people could work on it while there were other things going on in the room. And I didn't have to try to be in 2 places at once. We used the projector to put the design up there. Oh, and to create the design, the students brainstormed, but nobody really had like one cohesive idea. So then I just plugged in my computer and pulled up Photoshop and we made a grid and started putting the different parts of it together. They also knew they wanted a positive quote, so we have that there. And they talked about how everybody knows about sports. Sports get a lot of recognition. It was very important to them to represent different areas of the school. So we have like a whisk to represent the culinary classes and, music, Scholars Bowl, / academics. We just wanted to represent a lot of different things. I approached it like project-based learning. So I wanted the students to record as they went. Once again, you can watch this later. It's a little bit too long to go through now. But I interviewed students about like the process of it. COVID interrupted finishing the mural. We were supposed to finish it after spring break in 2020. That obviously didn't happen, but the following school year, we got it finished and finally installed. So that was super exciting to get that up on the wall. So yes, I already mentioned this. I'm kind of skipping around a little bit. The process for designing it, mock-up, class critique. And to start the mural, it depends on the design. You can do it with a projector, possibly depending on the space. Some things are easy enough to freehand. Some things are more precise where a grid or a projector would be helpful. Sometimes masking tape can help you visualize things. I'm going to show you a mural in a couple minutes where I use tape to kind of like help me get a curve. And then I would step back and look at it and go back and adjust it before I committed to drawing on it with something more permanent. Depending on the surface, sometimes chalk can work well because you can just wipe that off. And then you can go back over with something that will show up a little bit more. So there's a photo of one of my students drawing out her mural. She went over it with Sharpie, which ended up bleeding through like a couple parts of paint. It was really strange. So we had to do a lot of touch-ups there. But I haven't had Sharpie bleed through like that before. So there must have been something weird with the paint. I tell the students that when you're starting, you have to kind of consider if you're going to be doing blending or flat colors. If you need to blend something, obviously the paint needs to be wet. So you might need to do a smaller section at a time to know how to like transition to the next area. If it's something where people can help you, like this mural ended up being a flat color design, we did a little dab of the color. So that way there was a map and it wasn't confusing. Sometimes people will try to write the letter of the color, but that can confuse people and it's not as easy to see. You know, some of the murals could be done solo, most are being done with a team. And I did remind students that craftsmanship is super important because we're hoping these murals are going to be around for a long time. So we want to take the care and the time to make them, you know, look like our best work. So yeah, I did a really, really big mural project last fall before this class started. We had these stripes you can kind of see in the background here going around the gym, and gym's just, it just looked old and kind of boring. They wanted to take down all the banners and organize them. So my principal gets really big ideas and he's like, okay, what if, picture this. What if you design a new Cobra and the stripes that are going around the gym become the body of the Cobra and it wraps all the way around? Like, okay. So I did a sketch and just drew on top of the photo in Procreate, and he's like, okay, let's do it. So we got that approved. This is the mostly final version. It's not 100% finished now because I still have to go back and do some line work. I was paid for this. I was compensated for all the extra time. The Cobra backers, our athletic group, they sponsored the mural. So I was paid for that. And then I had a sub for a few days towards the end because we were trying really hard to get it finished before the first home basketball game. So I had students who were helping, you know, paint the scales and paint in big areas. I had some students who stayed after school and helped, but it was a really big project. But it got people super excited about how our gym looks now. Our school colors are actually closer to the colors on this pad here, like the kind of an old gold. But we made it brighter to match the bleachers. And now I have a digital version of just the head, and they're actually working on making it like our official school logo because we've never had one before. So that's been interesting to read about, like the trademark process and all of that, but that's kind of fun. All right, yeah. Sorry, I'm skipping around a lot. After going through all the history, I had the students look up murals that they liked of different examples. I really thought I had this in a different spot in the slide, so sorry. Hard to get, you know, specific categories, but here's some of them that I looked up. I wanted students to find examples of murals that spoke to them, just to give them inspiration and let them see all the different approaches that are possible. Then they started brainstorming. So yeah, found examples. Here's the before picture for the first mural. And it's a pretty narrow hallway, so that was very difficult to get a good photo of it. Whoops, that's there twice. This was the plan that we came up with collaboratively using leftover paint from the gym, that same Cobra with the text. I knew I didn't want us to try to like freehand that. So we had to go down in the basement to get a space where we could move the projector back far enough. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be great. We're going to project it onto butcher paper, then we'll transfer it. I knew there was a chance, thought maybe a tiny chance that like graphite paper would work. It didn't. So we ended up poking holes and kind of doing like every corner and then going back and connecting it. The text ended up being pretty challenging because I overestimated the student's ability to trace like straight lines with a projector. So we ended up just having to measure that and tape it all off. So it is, you know, coming along now. The letters are like halfway done. The Cobra is all the way done. I showed you a picture of my student drawing on the wall earlier. This was her digital plan. This is just a little nook right outside, right around the corner from my classroom. And this is the finished mural. And then if you're interested later, there's a video there. It has a song from Trolls. We thought that was a very appropriate song for this, but it's just happy and colorful and very much like that student's style. So that was really cool for her to have that opportunity. This one is just getting sketched on the wall. It's going to be outside of our wood shop. So hopefully next week he'll be ready to start painting on that. This is one of my students. He's going to major in art. So I feel confident, like, yes, you can design this on your own. And the wood shop teacher is pretty excited about that. So it's going to be fun when he starts getting color up there. All right. So if you're like kind of wondering, should I take this on? If someone's asking you to paint a mural, here are some things to think about. I had a friend ask me for some advice when her art club was approached about painting a mural out in the community. So this is what I told her to think about. So consider when you would be working on it. Is it close enough? And do you have long enough classes that you could do it during school? Or would it have to be done outside of school hours? Because if you're going to do it outside of school hours, it could be difficult to get students to help. Ask what they have in mind, and if it's something that the students are interested in, and helps you consider like how long it's going to take. Some styles are going to be a lot more time intensive than others. Just a reminder, if the kids aren't excited about it, they're probably not going to be very committed to helping it get done. Thinking about, are you painting inside or outside? Is the weather going to affect when you're working on it? Make sure if you're doing it for someone else that like they're compensating minimum of your supplies. Time would be nice too. What's the surface? As I learned with the concrete, like, is it going to be difficult to paint on? How much are you going to need? So there's just some basic things to think about. And then just obviously it is going to take a lot of time. So just, are you able and willing to commit to that? As far as getting supplies, house paint is obviously a good option. Flat paint covers better if it's like a rough surface, but in the end, I prefer semi-gloss just because it's easier to clean. We definitely use that in the gym, knowing that people are going to be like leaning against it when they're sitting in the bleachers and, food and things in the area. So we wanted to have semi-gloss paint there, and also to reflect a little bit of the light back so it wouldn't make the gym feel darker. If you're buying paint, overestimate how much you think you need. With the sunflower mural, they had to keep going back and getting more paint, and every time the color was a little bit different. So then I had to try to transition it and blend it in. So it's a lot better if you can get all your paint mixed at the same time if you are doing that. And then obviously you could get the sample sizes like Lindsay Kernodle suggested. So the brand that I really like is this mural paint. I really like the viscosity of it. It's like little containers, but a lot goes a long way. They've got some really intense pigment. Also, they have interesting names like slime. So the names are kind of fun. I got these mural paint markers, which I'm hoping to test out soon. I haven't tested them yet, but I'm optimistic that they're going to work great. We actually got a bunch of those. I did a Donors Choose grant to help get supplies for this mural class. So that's where those came from. You could also solicit donations for supplies. I posted online that we were looking for colors, and I did make sure to be specific and say what we did or didn't need, because I didn't want like 20 gallons of beige paint. So I said, we're good on neutrals, but if you have some brighter colors left over from a project, that would be great. So we had one person brought like 10 gallons of paint that had some nice colors that we're able to use. But getting supplies, you could potentially the district, because it's beautifying and improving, they may have some money for that, possibly Booster Club. We have Art Club that does some fundraising for different art supplies at my school, so that has helped there. And then I know not everybody can use Donors Choose. It is a good option for some people though. If you are curious, I do have linked the list of supplies that I ordered for this, tried to go through and pick a variety of colors that I thought would be good. And are there any questions? Because I know we're about out of time. I see there were some chat things. Thank you for the warning, Alyssa. I appreciate that. I knew I was going to be really close on time. Whew. All right.
I think the biggest thing in the chat, Katie, is people want the link to your presentation, which you'll be posting on Google Classroom, because I was trying to write down artist names real fast too.
Yeah, don't worry about that. I will post that this afternoon before we leave. I just wanted to wait until after this in case I added anything else to it. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay. Do we need a bio break? Are we feeling that? Quick little bio break. Okay. I'll get started at 10:05. Sound good for everybody?
All right. I'm going to stop the recording and then start it again when we are back for the next session.